Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Celebration of Life service for Mr. Rodney Sheridan. Rod, as he is known by many, and Pop. I met with the family last week, and they certainly emphasised that Rod would like today to be a celebration of his life. And so we're here today to give him the best send-off we can. That goodbye that he deserves, those memories that we're going to share about his life, his journey, about his family who loved him and supported him, for the generations that are following on in his stead, for the colleagues he worked with, for the friendships he made, and for the input he had in the education field. Cannot go unmentioned here today. My name is Lou Saunders and I'm a celebrant. It is my privilege, it's my honour to be able to conduct the service on behalf of the family. And I do thank you for the time we were able to spend in the home, your home the other day, Leonie, and just hearing a little bit about Rod's journey and seeing those photographs up on the television screen was truly an amazing input that you put. It's going to be a wonderful day. It's going to be a hard day, but it's going to be a necessary day. That we pause in our busyness and we say goodbye to a friend, a colleague, a husband, a father, a grandfather. I'm going to ask now if you wouldn't mind just checking your mobile phones for me, please, just to make sure they're off, but if they do need to be on, just on silent mode would be appreciated. And just an invitation on behalf of Leonie, Dale, Damien, Danielle and the families, if you'd like to join them at the country club up here on my right for a wake afterwards, you're more than welcome, more than welcome to join them. And I'm sure there'll be many memories that can be shared after you've heard some of the stories here today, those friendly reminders about life. I'm sure the photo show is going to be full of memories about Rod's life. And again, that just creates and stimulates memories of days gone by. So sometimes it's good at the end of a service like this, when the formalities are done, just to slow down enough and grab a tea and grab a coffee, grab something to eat and just chat about life with one another. You know, days like today are never easy for any of us. And as much as we prepare for someone's passing, when the day comes and they pass from this life to the next, we pause and we reflect how important life is to us all. We pause and reflect how important families are to us, friends are to us, how important it is to keep those friendships and those links and those connections going with other people. And sad to say, in our busyness, sometimes we come to days like today and we remember. We remember that we promised we'd catch up for a meal or at least a coffee down the track. We must pop down to Victor Harbour one day and catch up with Leonie and Rod and talk about those times where we worked together and played together. We come to days like today and we remember that we didn't make that time. We didn't have that time. And we sadly reflect that that time is now gone. But as I said at the beginning of the service, Rod wouldn't want that. He would want us to remember those good times, those challenging times, certainly in that education system within which he worked. He had some challenges, but from what I've heard and what I've read, he certainly met those challenges head on and got through and helped many others get through at teaching level, at principal level, and certainly students would remember his input into their lives. So today is very much about remembering the life of Rodney Sheridan, and that's what we're here to do, to support one another, to share those stories, and to honour his life. Before I invite his children up to share their memories of Dad, I'm going to open up with a beautiful poem written by Helen Lowry Marshall. It's called Afterglow. When I shared this poem with family the other day, they said this would just suit nicely because this is the memories Dad would like to leave behind. Afterglow. I'd like the memory of me to be a happy one. I'd like to leave an afterglow of smiles when day is done. I'd like to leave an echo whispering softly down the ways of happy times and laughing times and bright and sunny days. I'd like the tears of those who grieve to dry before the sun, of happy memories that I leave behind when day is done. So if I can invite Dale, Damien and Danielle forward now. They're just going to share some of Dad's journey of life with us and certainly some tributes to him. Thank you.
Okay. A most warm welcome to one and all for being here today. Dad, we are all here with you today, all of us who have loved and known you over the years, and what wonderful and full years they have been. Damien, Danielle and I stand here before you, amongst many others, friends and family, to express our love, gratitude and admiration to you. While many of us remember you as Rod, the school teacher and principal from here in South Australia, you started out on your family farm in Young, New South Wales. Youthful days filled with work and play, you would become the backbone of the Sheridan family farm, following in the footsteps of your pop, Arthur, and your father, Cliff, until its demise in the early 70s. Oh, what days! Days of yabbying, trapping rabbits, picking fruit, daredevil stunts on your bike, along with Cliff, your older brother, pruning trees, packing fruit for the market, sitting around the kitchen table with all the family, watched over by Mum, your grandmother, eating her wonderful scones. All your siblings are here today, Dad, whether in body or spirit, watching over you, here with you. Dad, they tell me that in those early years you were always there for them. Very early in your childhood, you lost your mum and a new sister in childbirth. Later you would recall, as a small boy, wandering around the farmyard trying to find something you had lost, but never sure what it was and never being able to find it. This wouldn't be the last of the challenges you would face early on. As a youth moving into manhood, your father descended deeper into alcoholism. Amidst this, you struggled but remained strong, always being there for your younger siblings, working ever harder on the orchards, trying to keep the place afloat. Of recent days, you have dwelt upon these times, recalling many a story. And what a storyteller you are. You have blessed us with your stories over the years of your experiences and keen observations, opening a window on our past better than any photo could. You told me of how when visiting your father in hospital, towards the end of the farm years, he told you to leave and to go and make a life for yourself. He knew how hard you had worked on the farm and that you deserved a future, that you had something more to offer the world than labouring on the farm. This was one of those decisions that would trouble you, but in moving away from Young and heading to South Australia, you would bless many more of our lives, many of them here today. In South Australia, along with your bride, our mum, Leonie, you were trained to be a teacher. You took up a scholarship and taking a leap of faith, you came to this far-off country, starting a new life all of your own. I don't know whether you ever had the dream of becoming an educator, but you applied yourself to it with vigour and hard work and truly made it your vocation in every sense of the word. After initially starting at a one-teacher school in Waiakawe, a decision that you may well have made to take control of the school from day one, knowing you had something to offer, not just as a teacher, but as a principal. It was then that we headed out into the desert. Even in Waiakawe, following Teachers College, you had made some lifelong friends, a pattern that would be repeated across the years. Then came the years in the Aboriginal schools, on the APY lands of the central west of South Australia. You always used to talk about your father getting along with everyone and anyone from all walks of life and social standing. Well, Dad, I think you inherited that amiability and then some. You went into the desert and connected with the people, serving in the communities, teaching and engaging the children, truly caring for the community as a whole. Recently at WOMAD, I came across some of the people from Ernabella Choir. All those years later, they remembered you and the work you had contributed to their communities. You were practical and pragmatic in your dealings, continuing to work day and night to make your schools a success, but not for the success, but for the kids and the communities. Grounding yourself in those communities, your practical nature and forthright confidence allowed you to bridge the divide between the education department and the isolated bush schools. You brokered no bullshit from the bureaucrats, always working for those you lived and worked with. And through this, you gained their respect from both sides of the track. I was there through those years on the lands, and then Damien came along too. For myself, I want to express my deepest gratitude for those times. I'm so glad you took the leap and went bush. I always felt so utterly held by you and Mum, and also the wonderful community you brought us into, and the land itself. And all the travels we did. You behind the steering wheel of your white panel van Kingswood, Mum riding shotgun, me piled in the back. Looking over your shoulders, hurtling along, hurtling along the bush highways. There were no roads you couldn't get us through. Mud or dust, we crossed the country. Out of the bush into the city. 1 year of study leave, and then you took us to Whyalla. From the infamous to the famous McCritchie Crescent Primary School. It was at McCritchie that you really made your mark as a school principal. Just recently, Jeff James sent us kids a letter recounting those years at McCritchie, sharing some beautiful memories of those years. Jeff will read for us a little later. For me, those years were ones of adventure, travel and dreaming into life. You and Mum took us on many a journey, travelling all over the country, from Tassie to far north Queensland and back to the central desert. This spirit of adventure would rub off on all of us kids. Each of us would set off on our own travels later. Reflecting on those experiences must have been for you and Mum. What leaps of faith, such a spirit of adventure, heading into the central desert country. You really brought the world to life for us. Another adventure was now on the horizon. Most of your life had been in the country and bush, but now we were heading to the big smoke, to Adelaide. I remember being super excited. We were going to the city. Adelaide was where you built our home. You bought your first house in Blackwood and made it the Sheridan home. Dad, and such memories I have. Of working with you on our place in Blackwood. Everything from major earthworks, which we did by hand, to construction of verandas, retaining walls, sheds and a cubby house. But for me, it was all about working alongside alongside my dad, which is what you did with your dad all those years ago, working with you, was sharing with you, a father and his son. Thank you, Dad, for being there with me, being my father. It's funny how life goes. It is only now 50 odd years later that I'm beginning to understand what it means to be a good father. Being there and being present. But you had it from the get-go. Your strength, stability, and love. These were the coming of age years for me, and while I had my own dreams to pursue, I took with me a deep sense of justice, equality, and egalitarianism. These all came from you, Dad. But they weren't a dry political stance. It all flowed out of caring and love for those around you. From your siblings to the bush communities to your teachers, and first and foremost your family, Mum and us three. Then out into the growing tribe of grandkids. From your home in Blackwood, you'd work in 2 more schools, growing a bigger community of friends, and it is being with these friends and family that you value the most. Whether on Easter trips to Barmera, to travelling back to Young at Christmas to be with family, both yours and Mum's side. Later still, you travelled Australia with Mum and friends, then on a number of trips overseas, which you loved all the more when you were with friends and family on these adventures. Just like our travels when we were kids. Salma's mum made a keen observation of you the other day. She said you had an enthusiasm for life. Over all the years, you have really taken the bull by the horns and lived every moment. Dad, we all love you so much, and we know how much you love us. My prayer for you is that you are watching us right now, reunited with your long-lost mum, and your dad too. I pray that you are at peace knowing that we are never apart, that we are all together and will always be together, one big happy family. Dad, I can't wait to see you again and give you a hug. But until then, I love you, my father, my wonderful dad. Amen.
Thank you for being here today. Rod and Leonie spread their wings as a young married couple and said goodbye to young New South Wales. They had decided to test the air elsewhere and bravely start a new chapter in their life together. Dad had an adventurous streak, one which Mum shared and embraced as they ranged throughout and across the Australian continent. Dad was a loving, caring, empathetic man. These qualities and more, like being tolerant, compassionate, and engaging, traits which connect with who he was as a person, paint a picture of a man who walked the walk and talked the talk. Brave to the point of recklessness, like driving between 2 semi-trailers stuck side by side on a waterlogged dirt highway, with the corridor separating their mass, just wide enough for someone driving a Holden panel van at high speed to plunge into, an aquaplane through and out the other side. If you had to get somewhere, then why not explore every available option? Translate that quality to a community of people, a school where young and old need to be led, where actions need to be taken. Situations and circumstances corrected and managed, and always towards outcomes. To help those people advance themselves, become more and achieve. He did that at more than one place, with more than one community, a good many actually. Dad would involve himself and be an effector, not a passive bystander. My father was an educator of note and a remarkable leader. So I've always, the love of family was for Dad paramount. Forget the excess of pretty baubles and trinkets. He focused on those circles of life around him. First, Leonie. His his treasured wife and eternal love. My beautiful mother and his children, who we love deeply. My courageous brother Dale. Myself. And my unwavering sister Daddy. Oh, shit.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's all right. Oh, sorry, people. I have been and remain incredibly lucky. Then to his family, the family he was born into, the one which helped form him and carried Dad through his younger years into adulthood and the adventures thereafter. The tragic loss of his mother Brenda as a young child and his father Cliff as a young man left their mark. I imagine most of us here have heard a tale or two of those early days, his exploits with older brother Cliff, the nurture of his young siblings Lorraine, Gary, Gay, Linny and Alan as he worked on the farm. 6 uncles and aunts, all who loved Pop very much. Reach further, a third time, and we find the children of those siblings and Leonie's family, her father Arnold and mother Aileen, and her siblings Rod, Robin, Barry and Kathy. Then on to friends, those of the early days, those who came later through new places and relationships formed. For me, significantly, Dad lived a life increasingly interrupted by episodes of pain. A slip disc as a young man on the farm, lifting a bag of grain, the culprit. In the later years it amplified, and then came his illness. I wanted to highlight this, as there was and is awe when I think about how he did not let that, at times, constant presence put the handbrake on his life. On the life he shared with Mum, you could say indomitable. He had his little comforts to see him through the tougher days, his hot water bottles, holding Mum's hand, the presence of his children. Would I have the necessary backbone? Would I stand firm throughout all those trials? He believed he needed to. He had work to do and people to care for, experiences to be met. He would not and did not break. You are amazing, Papa. I love you. You're my hero. Thank you for taking Dale and I on an epic ride from Wyler to Port Augusta, myself 7 at the time. Thank you for taking me to my football games as a youngster and the cans of sarsaparilla on the way home. Thank you for the freedom to choose in life and not be pushed. What is the future? For me, for us, it will be a future without. Dad has left us and we remain. We will carry him forward and he will be with us in our inner worlds. I'll miss you, my father. I love my Pop. Love you, Dad. In closing, I have 2 very important messages. To Lorraine and Brendan, thank you for being there during Dad's closing chapter. Your love, care and guidance were truly special. On a personal note, I have 4 treasures to anchor my heart. Thank you, Elisa. Archer, Zachary and Daisy. Your love is my world.
Elisa thanks you, Pop, for your unconditional love and embracing her as a daughter. Your 3 grandchildren love you and miss you dearly. Thank you for listening.
To my beautiful dad, I remember saying that to you only a short time ago, and you responded as usual, my beautiful daughter. One of the last things you said to me, and it will stay with me here forever and always. My beautiful dad, my special dad. You've always been there for me, but not just in a normal way. People always say, in a way that's been with me and around me, like a warm protective blanket all throughout my life. Memories have been floating back to me of the little things you'd do for me and with me when I was a young girl. Stirring my ice cream because I liked it soft. Dancing with me around the house, my feet on yours. Play fighting in the kitchen, laughing as we pretended to box each other. During school holidays, taking me to the cinema for our dad and daughter outings. Joining adventurers, where we shared activities and adventured with other daughters and dads. As a child, I knew you were capable of anything. You could overcome any obstacles, and nothing was ever too much. For me, you were invincible. Our home was filled with love. Security and a deep sense of safety. And that was done with seeming ease, so that I was not really aware of how blessed I was. Dad, you were always a loving, giving, generous father, and was never afraid to show affection, your affection for your children and for your beautiful wife. You were an honourable, devoted and respectful husband, and I always knew your bond with Mum was unshakable. Dad, you were also there for me, of course, in countless practical ways as I grew. And I think our relationship became more than just father and daughter, but also friends. You were a dear friend who I could call, and there would always be support, encouragement, warmth, interest, and often jokes and laughter on the other end of the line. I'm already missing these calls, and amongst so many other things. I'm missing your cheeky smile and infectious laughter. I'm missing cooking for you and you enjoying my food. I'm missing the idea of planning another camping trip with you and Mum. And even though we're not in Tasmania anymore, I'm missing your trips to visit us. I'm missing holding your hand and giving you a hug. I'm missing hearing about your next project. And there was always a next project. I'm missing you. But I will use the best of my qualities, Dad, that I know you instilled in me to help me move forward. My perseverance, determination, commitment and stubbornness, my love of life, appreciation of every day, and wonder of our earth. I will look to the sunrise and sunset and see your warm heart and bright eyes. I will look to the waves crashing at sea and feel your strength of body and mind. And I will look to wind in the trees and birds on the breeze and know you are here with me. Dad, I hope and I think you knew how special you were and are to me. The space you hold in my life will always be a part of me, and you will be walking beside me forever and always. I love you, my beautiful Dad. Be at peace with all our love wrapped around you, your warm and protective blanket. Thank you for listening, everyone, and thank you personally from Mum for being here with us today to celebrate the wonderful life of Dad and farewell him on the next part of his journey. I think he would be very pleased with the turnout. Thank you.
That's what makes a mum and a dad so proud of their kids, when they can stand up here so boldly and with pain in their hearts just share their love for their father. So well done to all three of you. I'm going to invite one of Rod's grandsons, Darcy, now, and he's going to share some memories with us. Thank you, Darcy.
Sorry. Didn't expect it to get me. We've gathered here today to commemorate a man of many titles. But of my cousins and myself, he was known as Pop. Above all, Pop was my mate. The laughs I shared with you, Pop, will continue to ring on. Comfort in a displaced moment, or the warping of time on a long drive. You always had a way of removing the loneliness in a crowded room. It may be my voice that fills this room, but there are many others that feel this way. We love you, Pop. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy, sorry. Well read. Brief but meaningful. Absolute. Well done. Not everyone was able to be with us today, and I'm so grateful that we can live stream, and certainly for those on the other end of the line, we do thank you for joining us, and for those who want to review the service later and sit quietly and take it in again. The beauty of technology does work. It does help. Certainly as a large family, Rod loved his family, and he certainly had a big input into his family as they did to him. So let me just share some of the family thoughts that came through as emails to us here today. From his brother-in-law and family, Barry, Libby, Maisie, Jason, Rebecca, Samantha and families have long-lasting memories of Rod, Leonie and family returning to Young over the years for family holidays. Rod and Leonie in the early days driving from all parts of South Australia to catch up with families loaded up with their little mini minor. The memories of those early and many later visits over the years will always remain. Our own holidays in South Australia will always bring back great memories. Rod will always be remembered as a wonderful and loving husband to Leonie and a devoted father and grandfather. Rod will be missed by all. We're sorry we could not be present today to celebrate Rod's life. From his brother Alan, to my dearest brother, you were there when I spoke my first words. You were there when I took my first steps. You taught me how to repair the trucks and the tractors on the farm. But I must admit, this was a pretty tough ask when your apprentice was only 3 years old. You saved me when I fell off the tractor while we were ploughing the orchard. You saved my life. You taught me some words I never knew existed when you were rebuilding the engine in the old Fordson tractor. You took me and my little sister Lynn on wonderful adventures and holidays. You treated us as if we were your own. I really don't know how we crammed the four of us and our luggage into a mini minor for a holiday in Adelaide, but we did. You nurtured the minds of thousands of young children during your career as a teacher and a headmaster, including many who were profoundly disadvantaged. What a wonderful and a rewarding career you had. You and Leonie brought a beautiful family into the world and raised them up to be open in their thoughts and in their actions. You both visited us many times after your retirement from full-time work. You brought the extended family together for the most wonderful reunions and celebrations. Your wedding anniversary in Young is one that we will never forget. You're a person of intellect and integrity, one who had great empathy and respect for his fellow man. If there were more like you in this world, there would be no wars or disadvantage, only peace and understanding. Rod is and will always be and was a truly remarkable individual, an education leader who dedicated his life to serving others, whether it be with children in remote Indigenous communities of the lands or the residential suburb of Happy Valley, and at school, Braveview, together with Heather Tevis, Phil Easton and myself, together with magical support staff of Sue Hackoff and Ann Pearce and many others, we bonded as a remarkable leadership team for Braveview Junior Primary and primary schools in the 90s. What made Rod truly special was not just his expertise and knowledge as a leader, but his humility. Despite Rod's vast experience and accomplishments, he never sought the spotlight or recognition. Rod always focused on the needs of the students, colleagues and families, and worked tirelessly to improve the lives of those around them. He was heavily involved in supporting the special classes for students with disabilities. His wisdom and his thoughtfulness was evident in everything he did. He had an incredible ability to see the bigger picture and to understand the complex issues facing education, and a clarity to take on what was important and not to get bogged down in the minutiae of administration or regional office wants or needs. He was never afraid to speak his mind or challenge the status quo, but when he did so, Rod did it with respect and with kindness. Rod had a kind and generous nature. He encouraged others to expand their knowledge and skills. He gave other people opportunities to grow. He let you make mistakes and learn from them. He told stories and had a sense of fun. I believe as a school teacher, he was also incredibly responsive to the needs of staff and the school community. Rod always made time to listen and to offer support and guidance. He was a true mentor to many, including Heather and myself. I would like to think his legacy will live on through the countless educators that he inspired and encouraged, such as Paul Luke, a former teacher at Braveview, now principal of Craigburn Primary, who is here with us today. But perhaps what I will remember most about Rod was his moral compass. Always there, even near the end, when we chatted over a cup of tea about the Braveview days only a few weeks ago. He was a champion for social justice and equity, and he never wavered in his commitment to the children in the schools that he led.
He understood the immense challenges children faced and worked tirelessly to create opportunities for them to succeed. What was especially special was life after Braveview. We remained friends and had twice yearly lunches together with Leonie and our partners for some 20 years in and around Adelaide. We met up in the Flinders, Penola, Robe, Port Fairy, and had planned a trip to Mildura to eat at Stefano's. But sadly, COVID put a stop to that adventure. Rod was a person who cared about and was interested and encouraging to you all. He was always up for a discussion about world and national events. He had a wide acceptance of difference. He and Leonie are very proud of their children and their grandchildren and always shared a story about their lives and adventures. Put simply, Rod was a shining example of what it means to be a human being, a good human being. He was kind, compassionate, and always put the needs of others before their own. He'll be deeply missed. Rest in peace, dear friend. We'll never forget the learning programs, the staff meetings, the mini fates, the talent quests, Christmas concerts, Tournament of the Minds, the newsletters, sports days, sausage sizzles, working bees, Friday after school drinks, and most of all our lunches together post-Braveview. Your memory will live on in our hearts forever. Much love. Heather Tilvis, Sue Hackoff, Anne Pearce, and Peter Simmons. And I did get a page mixed up there, so I really must finish Alan and Lana's story. Your deep and enduring love for Leonie is something we'll always admire. Unfortunately, we cannot be there for the service, but I'm truly thankful that I was able to see you a few times over the last 6 months and convey my thoughts to you in person. You have been and continue to be a wonderful inspiration and mentor to us all. All of our love to you, Leonie, and your extended family, Alan and Lana. And from his sister Gay, my dear Rod, everyone would have wanted you for a big brother, always kind, generous, and caring. Your family's love for each other will give them strength. You'll be forever in my heart, and I'll see you in my dreams. Your little sis, Dumps. And from his sister Linny, for my beautiful brother, I speak for all my siblings, their children and grandchildren when I say farewell to you. You've been our inspiration. You made my childhood a happier place. Your compassion, your humour, your love for family, your humility, and your complete understanding of what it meant to be a wonderful human being will stay with me and our families forever. Until we meet again, darling Rod, love Lily, Linny, Alan, Gary, Lorraine, and Guy, and their families. And from Brother Cliff. Our mother died in 1944. Rod was nearly 2, and I was nearly 4. From then, we have been unbreakable mates. We survived despite playing chicken with the school bus, riding a motorbike, standing on the seat, killing brown snakes. We lived out of town and didn't have access to town after school, but we had each other, and that is all we needed. The bond will never be broken, and someday soon we'll meet again. Until then, Rod, I'll think of you every day. Your mate, Cliff. And from his brother-in-law and family, Bev and Rod. Leonie, Dale, Damien, Danielle and families, how lucky we were to have a great brother-in-law and a friend in Rodney. He'll be missed by all. Sending you our deepest condolences, Rodney and Beverly and family. And from Jen Sheridan, Dad's niece, Uncle Roddy, I have some beautiful memories of our time together. And I'll hold these memories close and treasure them always. I love you. Beautiful sentiments and beautiful memories from family. I'm going to invite one of Rod's colleagues, Jeff James, forward now. He's going to share a few thoughts and memories with us. Thanks, Jeff.
As just introduced, my name's Jeff James, and I had the privilege of working with Rod on his staff in Whyalla a long time ago, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. I also had the opportunity to work alongside Rod for the latter part of his time in Whyalla, so really I'm going to cast back a long way to rekindle memories for some and hopefully enlighten the people who weren't really aware of what Rod was like as a younger man in his time in education. Rod arrived at McCritchie Crescent Primary School way back in 1978, 45 years ago. And in that era, things were done a little bit differently to what they are now, but Rod's impact on the people who were fortunate enough to be part of his teaching staff, I'm sure that time won't seem like 45 years, it'll more likely seem like yesterday. Up until that time, the primary school, reasonably big school, 450 students in the primary section and about 25 staff, had somewhat of a conservative reputation with a pretty dedicated staff, but maybe not a lot of cohesion on that staff. Maybe a little bit underwhelming, you could say. But at the end of 1977, memory, of course, is questionable at times, but at the end of 1977, word got out that a new principal was being appointed to the school. We'd heard it was an ex-farmer from country New South Wales. He'd taken up teaching later in his life and had been working as a principal in the APY lands. Little did the staff know at the time, but with Rod's arrival, that landscape at McCritchie Crescent Primary was about to change forever. From his very first day, Rod's natural warmth and his friendly outlook shone brightly. It was pretty obvious, and the comments and the stories you've already heard today, kind of that same person is the person that we remember. That same look that we see up on the screen, I bet we've all seen that at different times and not been 100% sure what's really that's meant to mean. I think it meant a lot of different things. From his very first day, his warmth shone brightly. He was obviously keen to make a good impression on the predominantly young staff. After all, people got sent to Whyalla straight out of uni or college in those days. And so his job was to kind of connect with this younger group. After all, there was a major generation gap. He was over 35. So without hesitation, Rod promptly invited the whole staff to his Whyalla home for a get-to-know-you gathering on the first Saturday night of the 1978 school year. He saw this as a great opportunity to meet everyone and to welcome newly appointed teachers. The gathering certainly turned out to be a massive hoot. In fact, it set a new standard for McCritchie staff shows from then on. Now, in an earlier correspondence, Dale mentioned that he remembered those shows, and he would have only been about 8 or 9, I reckon. I apologise now, Dale, for everything that happened on that veranda. And Damo, you weren't meant to be peeking through the window either. From the get-go, Rod and Leonie's hospitality and their relaxed, friendly demeanour made everyone around them feel comfortable and proud about being part of that McCritchie staff. Throughout Rod's 5-year stint at McCritchie, this never changed, and the school quickly earned the reputation of being the place to be. New staff were often excited to learn of their appointment to the school, and of course were welcomed accordingly. Rod had a natural, relaxed leadership style, and he embraced a friendly and vibrant culture. In fact, he encouraged it to flourish around him. Whether this was actually part of his game plan or he just let it happen is unknown, but one thing goes without saying. His approach to working with a young and vibrant staff was spot on. And with all the planets lining up during his time at McCritchie, He provided the heartbeat for what turned out to be a magical time for those who worked with him and around him. Rod valued honesty, friendship, respect, compassion and commitment. We've heard those words already today. And of course, these qualities all came naturally to him. He led by example, from the groundsman to the canteen manager, the school council chairperson to the school cleaner. Everyone felt a sense of importance and that their roles in the school were valued and appreciated as part of that McRitchie team. It goes without saying that this was especially so for the teaching and ancillary staff. It was Rod's way. He was the real deal. Nothing was too much for Rod, and nothing was unimportant. His door was always open to others, and so was his mind. When he needed to be a leader, he was a leader. When he needed to be a father figure, he was. When he needed to be a mate, he was. He was indeed a man for all seasons, and soon became a respected figure both in the school community and the wider district. It wasn't long before McRitchie Crescent Primary became a school to be envied in Whyalla. There were many great times. And that was only in reference to the school day. Things were just as exciting at happy hour on Fridays. Rod himself had unique leadership qualities. Some of them might have been a bit quirky, but I reckon one of his more notable ones was what I've described in my letter to the family as Rod's special gift for affirmation. Many people here today might remember that whenever they had a conversation with Rod, he would regularly nod his head. He might chuckle a little and definitely would repeat part of what you said back to you, usually saying something like, "That's right, that would be a good idea." This actually made you feel good, and I reckon it could have been a deliberate ploy to win your confidence and make your opinion seem valued. You would often walk away from the conversation with Rod feeling proud of yourself, thinking, "Hey, Rod agrees with me. That's good." In reality, whether this was his natural way or premeditated, Rod's talent for affirming and valuing the opinion of others encouraged dialogue and instilled confidence and enthusiasm and, of course, an open-minded discussion. His engaging style and his embracing of everything that seemed to be important to you was important to him. Definitely led the way to a shared staff vision and fostered a wonderful spirit of teamwork in the school. Any idea was worthy of consideration, and what quickly emerged as a work hard, play hard culture gave everyone a sense of fulfilment. Now that was empowerment in schools, and it was way ahead of its time. So Rod was about 12 to 15 years older than most of the staff, but he still loved to mix it socially with the young ones. In fact, one day he made the mistake of owning up that he could play a saxophone. We soon learned he also had a secret passion for performing. So one thing led to another, and at one very memorable staff show, Rod's impromptu saxophone performance became part of what's now McRitchie folklore. So much so that those dulcet and sometimes squeaky notes coming from his saxophone soon became a popular request at staff shows to follow. So much so that Rod actually revelled in the attention, including the night he had his shirt ripped off by an adoring female audience. You might have to speak to Carol Osborne about that one. Deep down, Rod loved to hang loose, even though he mostly presented himself as that calm, sensible and measured leader. Rod had an affable and jolly nature, and he loved to laugh. In fact, sometimes I think he'd even giggle with unbridled joy. This helped to make him a hugely popular character. He loved the parties and he loved seeing people having a good time. Many here would remember the bonfire nights in the bush or the staff crabbing events, even on a Thursday night after school. Rod loved listening to the jokes and stories of others, but he also revelled in telling his own stories and sharing some of his past experiences in the lands and on the farm. Leonie would cheerfully add the parts of the stories that he'd missed, And in these moments, that young McCritchie staff would momentarily stop to consider the wealth of life experience that both Rod and Leonie brought to the group. Of course, working with a young Whyalla staff also created an odd, unexpected challenge for Rod when he needed to think on his feet or outside the square to deal with things you wouldn't expect to see in the administrative guidelines. Here's a couple of examples, as Rod might have put it himself. One Monday morning, one of the young blokes turned up under the weather thinking he could teach after he'd been celebrating his soccer team premiership all night. So I said to him, "Well, you won't be teaching today, mate. You'll be heading back home to bed right now." Have a chat to Peter Badzik if you'd like to learn more about that one. Or on another occasion, again with Rod's speak, a couple of young blokes reported in sick one day and then sneaked off fishing for the day. Only problem, what a coincidence. They both came back to school the next day red as beetroot from sunburn. Have a chat to Peter Knott and Andy Holmes. Now, I don't think Rod took any action with that one, but he certainly knew about it. Didn't hear it from me, though. By now, Rod would be giggling if he's telling that story, and just as he did after he decided one day to turn up to a young teacher's house to give him a wake-up call when he'd failed to show up to teach his class. Tojo might be able to tell you a little about that story. Rod didn't always find things funny at first, but he was fairly quick to see the funny side of most things that didn't quite go to plan. And there were plenty of cutting-edge moments, all with their own stories, and some where the rule book hadn't even been written, like rounding up runaway students to finding workable alternatives to corporal punishment in the school. Put simply, Rod was highly respected and loved as a principal throughout his time at McCritchie. As a leader, he had amazing insight, and he encouraged others to chase their dreams and set high goals for their own achievement. He also saw the good in people and recognised their potential, even if their behaviour might have been a bit reckless at times. Rod was indeed a remarkable man who has had a huge impact on those who have been privileged to spend time with him, especially those young teachers from 1978 to 82. His leadership shaped McCritchie into one of the highest performing and cutting-edge schools of its era. It's hard to believe that Rod's no longer with us, and we share the saddest of hearts at this time. Rod's kindred spirit, his special talents and his infectious personality indeed will live on in our hearts and minds forever. Your star will keep shining, Rod. May you rest in peace.
Thanks, Jeff. Well shared. McCritchie School, eh? Going to invite Murray Thompson forward now, and he's going to share some tribute as well. Thanks, Murray. See the wisdom of an older man who takes the steps. You right there, Murray?
I have to be careful because 3 months ago I had a knee replacement. Rod was our son's father-in-law, who became, along with Leonie, very good friends to me and Joylene. We first met Rod when we were invited up to Blackwood to meet the family. Scott and Danny had recently got together, and I think Rod wanted to see what sort of family Danny had got herself tied up with. It did not take long for us to become very comfortable with each other, and we became firm friends, and globe-trotting companions. Our first trip was in 2007, when starting in Vancouver, we cruised to Alaska, taking in Ketchikan, Juneau, Skagway, Glacier Bay, College Fjord, and Whitaker. Cliff and Margaret were also on the cruise. And one thing we will never forget is the time Joylene was cutting a cob of corn when it shot off the plate and skittered across the dining room floor, only to be brought back by a solicitous waiter, along with the words, "I think this is yours, ma'am." The cruise was followed by a train and bus tour, ending in Fairbanks. Next, we did a land trip from Vancouver to Calgary. Rod volunteered to do all the driving, which he was very good at. Driving on the wrong side of the road did not faze him at all, whereas it would have made a wreck out of me. Our next adventure was a cruise to New Zealand, followed by a 14-day road trip of both islands, again being driven by Rod. In 2012, we set off to Europe. Rod and Leonie were already in Dublin, and we flew in from Madrid to catch up with them. I had arranged a 70th birthday dinner and show for Rod at a typical Irish pub. Then there was a road trip around Ireland for 10 days, after which we crossed to France on the ferry. We then began our road trip around Europe lasting 33 days, with Rod, as usual, happily and very competently doing all the driving, with just a couple of hiccups with the GPS navigator. When we were trying to return the hire car in Paris, we went round and round, hearing, "You've reached your destination," followed by, "When safe, get into left lane and perform a U-turn." Each time we noticed we were going past the train station. On the third pass, we discovered a road under the station. And there, lo and behold, was the hire car return. The other was when we were trying to find our hotel in Sorrento. We had received an email from the hotel which included these words: if you come by car, we don't recommend to use the navigator. Here the service is inefficient. Rod, however, decided to ignore that advice, and we set off following the navigator onto roads that were getting narrower and narrower until it became obvious, with shrubbery brushing the car on both sides, that we could go no farther. This entailed Rod having to reverse quite a distance until he found a gateway he could turn around in. We also had a 12-day cruise aboard the MSC Opera from Venice via Greece and Turkey to Ukraine and the Black Sea, returning Croatia to Venice. For this, we were a group of 9: Rod and Leonie, Cliff and Margaret, Lindsay and Zini, me and Joylene, and Debbie, her sister. Minus Cliff and Margaret, we flew to Madrid for a 15-day tour of Spain, Portugal, and Morocco. Back in Madrid, we went our separate ways. Joylene, Debbie, and I to London, Rod and Leonie, Lindsay, and Zini returning to Australia. On one of our recent visits to spend the day with Rod and Leonie, we looked at at a slideshow of that visit to Spain, Portugal and Morocco. Rod said again how much he enjoyed Morocco. Together we visited 18 countries: Alaska, Canada, New Zealand, Ireland, France, Holland, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Liechtenstein, Italy, Greece, Turkey, Croatia, Ukraine, Spain, Portugal and Morocco. We have lost a great travelling companion and a much loved friend. Now, dear friend, on your last trip, we wish you bon voyage.
Memories are wonderful things, aren't they? And it's amazing what we remember out of things we've forgotten. And so today it's about remembering Rod's impact on all your lives. I'm just going to read two more tributes here to Rod, and then we're going to pause and reflect on Rod's life in photo form. From a former colleague at McCritchie School, Whyalla, Colleen O'Connell writes, as a first-year teacher, I work with Rod at McCritchie Crescent in Whyalla. I feel blessed and privileged to have been mentored by such a lovely man. Rod was our leader, and yet he was also a friend and father figure to his staff, many of whom were in their first years of teaching and also living away from home for the first time. Rod was respected and admired by all who knew him. He was understanding and supportive, and possessed a gift for bringing out the best in all of us. Rod had that wonderful ability to lead us during the week and then party with us on the weekend. He was a beautiful, fun, and kind man. Rod epitomised that wonderful balance of leader, mentor, and friend, while also being a dedicated family man. Rod was loved by everyone who worked with him at McCritchie, and personally, I'm incredibly thankful to Rod for his support and guidance, and for making my first 4 years of teaching such an incredible, positive experience. Farewell, dear Rod. You'll always be remembered. And from Tony Osborne, just a few words about Rod. First, let me say Rod was not only the best principal I ever had, daylight second, he was also my mentor, role model, and mate. I first met Rod and Leonie at their place at the annual McCritchie start of school year get-together way back in 1980. Jeff, it keeps going on, doesn't it? As was the norm, there was plenty of food and drink, and all the staff in attendance were getting on like a house on fire. You see, Rod had a long-held belief that a staff that got on well together would support each other, and that this collaboration between staff would bring about the best teaching and learning for the kids. McCritchie Crescent Primary School in the late 70s, early 80s was no walk in the park. Those kids had some of the toughest family backgrounds imaginable, and yet Rod presided over some of the best teaching practice I've witnessed. With Rod as your principal, you always knew he had your back. In return, he set the highest of expectations for us all. He would never tolerate any slackness, as evidenced by one famous morning, and this follows on from Jeff's story, when he suspected one of his teachers' absences from school was due to a self-inflicted headache. Word had filtered through about a late-night party the night before. When Rod heard that a teacher, whose name shall remain anonymous for a fear of embarrassing Toji, was going to be absent, he immediately jumped in his car and made his way around to his place. On arriving, Rod walked around the house, rattled the bedroom window of the said teacher, and after waking him up, politely suggested that he should get himself out of bed and into school as quickly as humanly possible. That was Rod to a T. He believed in playing hard
as long as you worked hard. Rod earned the respect of every teacher I know that worked with him. If he asked you to do something, you would do your darndest to get it done. As principal at McRitchie, I suspect every school he led, he genuinely made a difference. Rod enjoyed a beer, and Rod and Leonie rarely turned down an invite to a party. In fact, they regularly attended our end-of-year show, a sort of pseudo-Whyalla teachers reunion, right up until last year. I knew something was up when Rod rang to say Leonie and him wouldn't be able to make it. I mean, the previous year, despite living down in Victor and being in his 80s, he still made the effort to get to our place for our annual catch-up. One last story about Rod. I've decided to invite a few close mates to a remote corner of Western Australia for my 50th birthday. As we all know, Rod suffered from a chronic back pain and for most of his life. At the time, the road between Broome and Cape Levesque was 200 kilometres of heavy corrugation. The sort of corrugation that is painful to a healthy back, let alone one like Rod's. You can imagine my surprise when Rod replied to my invite saying they would be delighted to attend. Not one to be easily deterred, after driving from Adelaide, Rod arranged for us to pick up Leonie in Broome, while he arranged to catch a plane to Cape Levesque. That was Rod. He always found a way. He always took a shortcut. He never took a shortcut. I learnt so much from Rod, both of it at his personal and his professional level. I've lost a really good mate, and the world has lost a really good bloke. Our deepest condolences to Leonie and the family. Rest in peace, Rod. And the other one I'd read, that one I'd slipped in as well. And in closing, one from Marie Andrews. Hi Danielle, just a few notes which you've probably already used. Anyway, here goes. Rod was a gentleman, both as a friend and a colleague. Professional relationships developed into family relationships, friendships. He was caring, kind, firm and understanding, and built strong professional relationships with all his staff. Always doing the best possible, whichever school he was at. With new staff, he provided valuable induction programs, coaching them with attention to detail, breaking down tasks to assist them in developing their skills. Teachers appreciated that he was always available to listen, to help, and to support them. I remember a morning before school in Whyalla when at McRitchie. He went down to the canteen where a freezer needed moving and he hurt his back. I'm not sure if he aggravated an existing injury or was the start of his back issue. Anyway, he just soldiered on. And years later, if we went out to lunch, he brought his own chair, as everyone will know. Rod was always welcoming and always fun to be with. We will miss him. Love, Marie Andrews. Some beautiful, beautiful thoughts and beautiful, beautiful memories, and I think it'd be nice now just to pause, to reflect, and to view the life of Rod Sheridan. And thank you, family, for all these photos. Thank you for allowing us into
Beautifully done. Over the years, from such humble beginnings, Rod made choices that not only impacted his family's life, but it's going through the generations, through teachers, through schools, through students, turning themselves into young adults and seeking careers themselves. He certainly made an impact on, as someone said, thousands of lives over the years. Saying goodbye to someone is hard at the best of times. But to say goodbye at a service like this is probably one of the hardest things we face. And so I'm going to invite Jim and Jackie from Simplicity Funerals forward now, and their instruction, if you would like to come forward and place some rose petals on the coffin and say your farewells to Rod. And then if you wouldn't mind just returning to your seats just for a short while, we begin to bring the service to a close. Again, it's a great way to say your goodbyes. Perhaps you never had that opportunity to say to a mate, to a colleague, to a friend, goodbye. Godspeed. So Jackie and Jim, if you could come forward now, please, that would be great. Thank you. Rod's body may sit still. His creative, thinking mind is now at peace, but his spirit lives on. His spirit lives on in all the lives he touched over his 80 years. Countless lives have been changed and impacted, including yours, by knowing Rod. And can I encourage you that his life was changed by knowing you? You've played an important part in him living out the life he lived. Before we lay Rod to rest, I want to share this beautiful poem. It's called Memories of the Heart. I believe this would be Rod's message to you all here today and to those who are joining us on live stream. Written by a famous author, unknown. Feel no guilt in laughter. He knows how much you care. Feel no sorrow in a smile that he's not here to share. You cannot grieve forever. He would not want you to. He would hope that you would carry on the way you always do. So talk about the good times and the ways you showed you cared, the days you spent together, all the happiness you shared. Let the memories surround you. A word someone may say will suddenly recapture a time, an hour, a day that brings him back as clearly as though he was still here and fills you with the feelings that he is always near. For if you keep those memories, you'll never be far apart, and Rod will live forever, locked safe within your heart. Family and friends, I'm going to ask if you're able now, would you stand with me as we speak words of committal over Rod here today? Family and friends, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose on earth. A time to be born, and sadly, time to die. Here in this last act is sorrow, but certainly without fear. Love, and also an appreciation, we commit Rod to his natural end. Family and friends, we come from the dust, and we return to the dust. We therefore commit this body for cremation, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, memory to memory, peace to peace, and love to love. Rodney Sheridan. Rod, may you now eternally rest in peace. I'd now like to invite the pallbearers forward. And again, on behalf of the family, I would like to again thank you for your love, your support shown not only on today, but the days that have led to today. The family has certainly appreciated the contacts being made, the support given. The family can again thank you for allowing me to take the service today. It's been a privilege and an honour to do so. Just a reminder for those who'd like to join us at the Trapping Country Club just up the way to be awake hill after the hearse leaves. The families also requested if they could just take Rod out to the hearse firstly, and after a short time we can then join them to farewell Rod from here. So thank you again. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Bearers.
G